Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Galaxy Report. The Galaxy Report is here to bring you breaking intergalactic stories, as featured first on thedailygalaxy.com. I'm Nicole Butcher, and today we're going to be diving deep into Earth's ocean to look at the potential that one of its most intelligent species, i.e. the octopus, is in fact an alien, seeded on the planet by an interstellar genetic code. This is called the alien octopus hypothesis. Scientists speculate that the clue might be found in the ancient precursor to life, RNA. I suspect it's the same hunger that leaves many of us yearning to know aliens. How do radically different minds work? What is it like to be a truly different being living in a similar world? The flying objects above remain unidentified, but the incomprehensible objects below do not, says Ezra Klein in his podcast for the New York Times. In April 2018, the peer-reviewed journal Progress in Biophysics and Molecular Biology published a remarkable scientific paper entitled Cause of the Cambrian Explosion, Terrestrial or Cosmic. With 33 authors from a wide range of universities and research institutes, the paper makes a seemingly incredible conjecture that, if true, would have the most profound consequences for our understanding of the universe, namely that life did not originate on planet Earth. The paper makes a long-debated conclusion that life may have been seeded here on Earth by life-bearing comets as soon as conditions on Earth allowed it to flourish, about or just before 4.1 billion years ago, and that living organisms such as space-resistant and space-hardy bacteria, viruses, more complex eukaryotic cells, fertilized ova, and seeds have been continuously delivered ever since to Earth, so being one important driver of further terrestrial evolution, which has resulted in considerable genetic diversity and led to the emergence of mankind. A focus of the paper is the remarkable evolution of intelligent complexity culminating in the emergence of the octopus and cephalopods. The genome of the octopus shows a staggering level of complexity, with 33,000 protein-coded genes, more than is present in Homo sapiens. Its large brain and sophisticated nervous system, camera-like eyes, flexible bodies, instantaneous camouflage, are just a few of the striking features that appear suddenly on the evolutionary scene 270 million years ago. The transformative genes leading from the consensus ancestral nautilus to the common cuttlefish, the squid, and even the common octopus are not easily found in any pre-existing life form. It is plausible then to suggest they seem to be borrowed from a far distant future in terms of terrestrial evolution, or more realistically, from the cosmos at large. Such an extraterrestrial origin, as an explanation, runs counter to the prevailing dominant paradigm. However, wrote neurobiologist Clifton Ragsdale at the University of Chicago's Marine Biological Institute in an email to the Daily Galaxy, the octopus, along with other extant soft-bodied cephalopods, squid and cuttlefish, are full of striking evolutionary innovations. It's unfortunate that, because they are soft-bodied, there's not much of a fossil record to address how they've evolved. However, genome analysis clearly shows that the octopus and other cephalopods all evolved from molluscan ancestors. There are no good reasons to think otherwise. Like the basics of the human brain that first evolved in the sea, cephalopods, octopuses, squid, and nautiluses are an island of mental complexity in the sea of invertebrate animals, says Peter Godfrey Smith, philosopher of science at the University of Sydney and author of The Octopus, the Sea, and the Deep Origins of Consciousness. If we can make contact with cephalopods as sentient beings, it is not because of a shared history, not because of kinship, but because evolution built minds twice over, adds Godfrey Smith. This is probably the closest we will come to meeting an intelligent alien. Researchers found octopuses and some of their cuttlefish and squid cousins regularly edit their RNA, an advanced biological ability they claim that came from outer space. Perhaps the most controversial aspect of the new paper concerns the origins of the octopus. The discussion begins, as it so often does in the paper, with some plausible evidence. Cephalopods have a somewhat confusing evolutionary tree, first appearing in the late Cambrian period and seemingly descended from an ancestral primitive nautiloid. Of these, the octopus is seemingly the most striking, with features such as a complex nervous system, sophisticated eyes, and the capacity for camouflage. The genes necessary for this transformation, the author suggests, are not present in that ancestry. In particular, there is evidence of extensive changes in the RNA, and thus proteins, found in the neural structures of cephalopods. These changes have been preserved and are not found to this extent elsewhere in nature or even Nautilus. This indicates that a qualitative evolutionary transformation occurred relatively recently and abruptly in behaviorally complex cephalopods. The sheer scale of these changes leads the authors to conclude that it cannot be explained by normal Darwinian evolution. One plausible explanation is the alien hypothesis, researchers argue. In our view, it is that the new genes are likely new extraterrestrial imports to Earth, and most plausibly as an already coherent group of functioning genes within, say, cryopreserved and matrix-protected fertilized octopus eggs, writes the authors. This would be a parsimonious cosmic explanation for the octopus's sudden emergence on Earth. The Cambrian Explosion was a period of time where life on Earth diversified dramatically, which took place shortly after the emergence of retroviruses in our environment. It was especially dramatic for a type of mollusk called the cephalopod. Tentacles reached out from their shells and wove their way into an enormous variety of creatures, which eventually became the octopus, cuttlefish, and squid. We believe this coincidence is not fortuitous, but it is consistent with one key prediction, whereby major extinction, diversification, and evolutionary boundaries coincide with virus-bearing comet bombardment events, the study abstract reads. The idea is that space-borne retroviruses eventually found their way to Earth's surface before attaching themselves to living organisms. Once there, they reprogrammed the creature's evolution. A second focus is the remarkable evolution of intelligent complexity, culminating the emergence of the octopus. A third focus concerns the microorganism fossil evidence contained within meteorites, as well as the detection in the upper atmosphere of apparent incoming life-bearing particles from space. The paper argues this space-based transfer of life was likely on a larger scale than just retroviruses. Whole sets of frozen genetic material were cast about on stellar winds before reaching our tiny blue dot. Thus, the possibility that cryopreserved squid and/or octopus arrived in icy bolids several 100 million years ago should not be discounted, the study reads. RNA, like DNA, records genetic code, but where DNA is a double-stranded molecule, RNA consists of just one strand. Its role within our body is to transmit genetic information to trigger the potential of proteins. But some scientists feel RNA may have been the original DNA, acting as a permanent storehouse of genetic code among Earth's earliest organisms. Researchers have found that when it comes to cephalopods, like the common squid, up to 60% of the RNA in its nervous system had been edited after it was programmed by the DNA. These changes adapted its brain to shifting temperatures in its ocean habitat. This shows that high levels of RNA editing is an invention of the coleoid cephalopods. U.S. Marine Biological Laboratory researcher Joshua Rosenthal said, "The central dogma of biology," says Rosenthal, "is that genetic information passes faithfully from DNA to RNA before being decoded into proteins. This information can be manipulated at any stage. When done in DNA, the changes are irreversible. Organisms can alter information in RNA because it provides a flexible platform." The alien octopus hypothesis is yet to be proven and faces many challenges and questions within the scientific community. Octopuses have many peculiarities, but they are clearly within the mollusks, with clear relationship to other mollusks and to other invertebrate animals, writes Peter Godfrey Smith in an email to the Daily Galaxy. Smith continues in his 2018 blog post, "Octopuses did not come from space," that the reported first sequencing of an octopus genome by Caroline Albertine and co-authors in 2015, although it points out that octopuses have unique genetic features that are unorthodox, they still sit very comfortably within their apparent animal relatives on Earth, rather than being additions from somewhere else. Other acknowledged experts are unconvinced by the findings. Avi Loeb, professor of science at Harvard University, says the study raised an interesting but controversial possibility, offering no indisputable proof that the Cambrian explosion is the result of panspermia. Astrobiologist Franz Westphal, who was involved in the European Space Agency's Mars Express mission, was skeptical of the paper. For instance, some microbial cells and seeds would have had to survive in space for certain periods of time. But in the scenario offered in this paper, they would need to have survived in interstellar space for thousands of years. Although the chemical building blocks for life may be cosmic, more experimental work on Earth needs to be done to probe the origins of life on Earth, Westphal said. Unfortunately, it is all too easy to pull information out of literature to support one's hypothesis. She added, "Nature is incredible, and I don't think it's necessary to call on extraterrestrials to explain everything." This story was published first on thedailygalaxy.com by Avi Shapur, who's a research scientist at MIT Cavalli Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. I'm Nicole Butcher, and it's been a pleasure narrating this deep-sea journey with you. Make sure to subscribe to the Galaxy Report YouTube channel